5 Live Formula One.
Hello and welcome to round 16 of the Formula One World Championship from Monza. And I have to say, the circuit, the Temple of Speed, is one that I absolutely love. Surrounded by woodlands, the dappled light coming through, the sunshine pouring down on the track that the Tifosi, the Italian fans, flock to. They will be hoping for a Ferrari win. Harry Benjamin alongside me, Jenny Gow, our F1 commentator this weekend. Harry, a Ferrari win, is it on the cards?
I don't think so.
Oh, come on.
Look, anything is possible in Formula One, but I mean, look, Ferrari particularly have fallen back over the last few races. Ever since they introduced an upgrade back in Spain, they're one of the only teams that have had that old porpoising return, the bouncing up and down, which hasn't gone their way, and they've been trying to find a way back to the form that they had. They've brought a lot of upgrades, performance upgrades this weekend, so that should power them forward, hopefully. But also, I do believe that if any fan is going to give a couple of extra tenths, it's going to be the Tifosi on home soil for Ferrari. That is going to power them. I mean, pole last year for Carlos Sainz was amazing to witness on his birthday as well. It's his birthday on Sunday. Maybe he'll get a power from that as well.
Well, let's see. Beck Clancy is alongside me as well, editor-in-chief at Autosport, and Beck, I think 5 previous winners on the course this weekend, on the track this weekend, taking to the racetrack. I'm lost for words because I'm just looking at the absolute scenes in Italy, and even though it's FP1, it's quite a special FP1 because we've got 2 new drivers.
Yeah, it's exciting, isn't it? We've had quite a lot of news this week, it feels like. Always the way with F1, it's never quiet. So we have the news that Williams have finally dropped Logan Sargent. I don't think that'll be a surprise to anybody. Perhaps the timing is the only shock, really. Obviously, after that big smash in Zandvoort last weekend, James Vowles, the team principal, decided enough was enough. So now we have Franco Colapinto coming in. Really
what
exciting.
An excellent name.
Thank you very. Did you like how I didn't flounder on it as well? Yeah, I've been practicing that. He, 21-year-old Argentinian, a great prospect. He's been part of the Williams Young Driver Program. He's got signed up at the start of last year. He is in F2, well, was in F2, I should say. He's been obviously pulled out to race these remaining 9 races. And so that's very exciting. And then we also have Kimi Antonelli.
Woohoo! Fanfare!
Who we have been talking about all season. Finally, finally, he is going to be in the Mercedes for FP1, replacing George Russell. We are all fully expecting Mercedes to announce him as the replacement of Lewis Hamilton. That announcement expected in the next week or so, although for anyone listening at Zandvoort, you may have heard Toto Wolff almost pretty much confirming it already. So yes, 2 drivers. There will be a lot of eyeballs on those 2 for the next hour or so.
I can't wait to see both of them in action. I mean, Franco, I don't know much about him, if I'm going to be totally honest. I think most people listening in might not know too much about him. He's a bit of a dark horse. I don't think we were really expecting him to get the Williams seat, and it's a massive opportunity for him.
Yeah, I mean, 2 very different mindsets, I think, for these drivers who are at a fairly similar point in their career. Obviously, Kimi Antonelli has been incredibly, I don't want to say overrated, but incredibly hyped over the last couple of years.
Are you on the hype train?
Well, it's hard not to be when everybody's going on about the guy. He missed out Formula 3, went straight from the championship below, which is called Formula Regional, won that, skipped F3, moved into F2. The start of the year of F2 didn't go quite so well, but there's more to it than just his performances. Oliver Bearman is his teammate in Formula 2 with the Prema team, who have been historically amazing in Formula 2 in the junior categories. New car was introduced this year, so they've had some struggles getting used to the setup and team infrastructure around that, so there's a lot to be explained for that. But he's just getting kitted out into the car now. Toto Wolff is leaning over and giving him a handshake. George Russell is even smiling on. It's Russell's car.
I mean, he doesn't really have much of an option, Harry.
No, he's doing a very good job of towing the party line, isn't he, of what could be could be his teammate next year, and well, if
will
we're thinking
certainly
super long
be
term,
his teammate, I suppose.
But the other thing that Russell needs to be slightly concerned about in the long term is if Antonelli does really live up to the hype and outperforms Russell perhaps next year. We know Toto Wolff has been trying to get Verstappen and will continue to get Verstappen for as long as there is the slimmest of chances. There could be an occasion where Russell suddenly finds himself exiting the door at Mercedes. But and then just to come back to Colapinto, yes, completely surprising. I didn't see that one coming, but actually I really like the fact that it is Colapinto. I think for Williams it almost gives them a bit of a boost internally because they've gone for an academy member within their team, replacing another academy member, but I think that shows faith in their own picks, in the young talent, and also they can get a load of data on him. And I don't think he's got much pressure on him either, because he's not fighting for a Williams seat next year, because that'll go to Carlos Sainz.
Absolutely right. You can hear Cars Are Out on Track. If you do want to hear more from Toto Wolff, you can do that in the Checkered Flag podcast, which we shall all be recording slightly later. So, eyes down. It's time for FP1. Harry, this is going to be, I think, one of the most interesting FP1s we've seen all year.
I don't think I've been more excited for a free practice one in a while. The clock is already counting down, so should you wish to do a sync-up, it is 59 minutes. And on the dot, actually, we'll do it again, shall we? 58 minutes, 57, 56, 55 seconds remain of free practice one, and pretty much everybody is making their way out. Big aero rakes on some of these cars as well. A lot of cars, of course, bringing new front wing and rear wing, skinny front wing and rear wings, because a low downforce setup is needed for this Monza track. Incredibly high speeds, which of course that brings incredibly high demands on the braking as well, so that'll be something to watch out for around this Monza circuit. Just over 5.7 kilometers, 3.6 miles, 11 turns, 7 to the right and 4 to the left, as Kimi Antonelli has already made his way out on track. There will be a lot of eyes on this young Italian who could be the first Italian racer since, well, it would be Antonio Giovinazzi was the last Italian Formula One driver for the Alfa Romeo team. He is here this weekend in his reserve role for Ferrari. But Bex, Monza as a track is the last one on the calendar in terms of European legs before we head further afield. But there's been a little bit of furore coming into this, because there's been some track changes, notably to some of the curbs, and of course, and actually the entire track has been resurfaced. So that could change the game a little bit.
Oh yes, the drivers are not happy. In the words of Alex Wurz, the drivers' WhatsApp group blew up on Thursday when they found out that the curbs, particularly around Ascari, have been flattened out. So traditionally they were horrendous and you would try and avoid them, and that was part of the challenge of driving here. As Jenny mentioned at the start, this is the temple of speed. It's absolutely flat out, and it's all a case. If you hit those curbs traditionally, you'd be launched into the air. We've seen accidents. They have been a bit contentious in the past. The track itself have decided to flatten out those curbs, and I think that a lot of what we'll be watching for during FP1 is how the drivers are now approaching it, because will they be cutting the corners? How much of a challenge is it for them? They're arguing that actually takes away that old school proper driver challenge that the drivers really enjoy, and so they're grumpy that it's been made easier for them to drive.
Yeah, I heard the drivers' WhatsApp chat was absolutely lighting up as all the drivers made their way either on a bike or walking the track. The sound you're hearing is the first flyer from Kimi Antonelli as he stamps on the brakes heading through the Ascari chicane. That's one of the chicanes where the curb has been flattened now, which some of the drivers feel takes away from the old school nature of it. Antonelli flat out through the left-hand turn king that brings you down to that long straight before you slam onto the brakes into the right-hander of Parabolica, or if you're going to be really official, the Alboreto curve. But I think we should keep Parabolica for as long as we can. And across the line for Kimi Antonelli, and he goes fastest, a 1:23.955 for Kimi Antonelli as he eases off the brakes and moves out of the way before he heads into the Rettifilo chicane. That's turns 1 and 2, where again the bollards have been removed there. There's been a bit of a gravel strip added into the central runoff area, about 2.5 meters wide. Jen.
Just trying to work out, what do you think Antonelli needs to do, and what are we expecting him to do? Because it's hard, isn't it, to gauge someone's performance just in an FP1. And if you're new to FP1, you might not understand what they're doing and what they're going to try and get out for Antonelli.
Well, I think one of the main things for Antonelli to get up to grips with will be, first of all, just driving laps of a modern Formula One car, or this year's modern Formula One car. He has been out a couple of times in a couple-year-old Mercedes car, so he has got extensive experience in a current modern-ish Formula One car, but that will be the first thing. But equally, it will be his relationship and giving feedback to his engineers, how he copes over the radio. One thing we do know is that Mercedes are still trialling this new floor, which they just can't seem to get on top of at the moment, and they are back-to-back testing that in free practice one. So there may be an element of there what Antonelli can bring, some perhaps an outsider's view, different to Hamilton and Russell, that he can bring in terms of his technical feedback. So that'll be another thing they'll be monitoring too throughout the session. And equally, they will be looking at data and sheer lap time. In FP1, the way they've gone so far this year, he should be able to get a bit of a qualifying run in, so they will be able to see what he can do when they turn that car up to, I won't say full wick, because they won't want to give away their full hand, but they'll give him a decent run out. So that is what they'll be observing from Antonelli. But we've got to remember, as Verstappen locks up going into turn one, and as per the rules, you have to go straight on through the polystyrene boardings as you weave left then right. You cannot cut the grass unless, according to the race director's notes, it is impossible for you to take the polystyrene runoff area. Hamilton said it. He's only 18 years old. We've got to remember that as well. And I think in this modern era of Formula One, Bex, I don't know if you agree, but I feel like the pressure has ramped up massively on younger drivers, because they have to come to terms and mature way quicker than I think they used to. I think Verstappen was the turning point, really, in terms of that younger generation realising they could get to Formula One a lot quicker than the past had. But also, they get such limited running now, so they're expected to be, on the pace, near enough, but yet back in the day they would have had extensive testing, and that just doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah, I think they get a little bit more grace than perhaps we in the media give them within the team. I think they do get more time in a main F1 seat than they probably traditionally would have done, because it's well known that they don't get that extra testing. Just on your point on Antonelli, yes, he is just 18 as of a week ago, but I think a lot of the pressure on him actually is a result of Mercedes. When Lewis Hamilton announced at the start of the year that he was going to Ferrari, they started talking up Antonelli, and most of us within F1 we knew about him, but the wider world maybe not so much. And actually he was suddenly the focus of everybody's attention, and that was as a result of what Mercedes were doing. And then obviously they closed ranks around him, rightly so. He was kept away from the media. There was a lot of conversation. Does anyone actually know what he sounds like? No one knew what his voice sounded like. And I completely understand that. He was only 17. Mercedes were trying to protect him, almost rowing back on what they had said at the start of the year. He has now obviously done some media. Obviously he's had 2 wins in F2, as you said earlier, obviously struggling to get to grips with that new F2 car, but has now done so and has enjoyed some wins. So he has now done some media, which is great for us because we can put lots of questions to him. But yeah, there is a lot of pressure, but this is the absolute pinnacle of motorsport. There comes with huge amounts of pressure. Lando Norris was saying actually on Thursday that he still gets so nervous on race weekends that he can't eat, he can't drink on Sundays. When he goes into qualifying, he feels sick.
That's like me on Grand Prix Sunday as well.
That's me right now. But he, and I don't know if that feeling ever goes away. I don't think the pressure ever goes away.
I was reading about James Hunt the other day, and just how much he suffered with his anxiety and nerves before he got into the car. Now we're talking about one of the greatest ever that we all know and love, and yet his car used to vibrate because he got so nervous. And can you imagine that nerves coming through and affecting the performance of the car, and you're constantly fighting it? I just think how these drivers go out there and week in, week out perform to the highest spec is we take it for granted sometimes, I think.
We do, but I also think as soon as the visor comes down, the adrenaline is pumping, those nerves almost disappear, and they are so laser focused. I remember one of the things that surprised me when I first came into F1, I found it difficult to marry the person who I would talk to in the media centre, this really lovely guy, very polite, engaging, asking about family and all this sort of stuff, and then they would go into the car and be these ruthless animals racing at 200 miles an hour plus, millimetres away from concrete walls, and it was just so difficult to understand how... Big
Antonelli's into the wall! And that was the last thing Antonelli needed in his FP1 outing, and he is off and into the wall and in the barrier. That's coming round the final corner, the Parabolica. He's turned it in and lost the rear, skidded across the gravel. And if you saw social media, the Aston Martin safety car on Thursday did exactly the same thing. And Antonelli has found the wall, front wing off, he's facing backwards, he's moving in the cockpit. And Antonelli says on the radio, I'm okay, and that is probably the worst case scenario for Kimi Antonelli on debut in a Formula One weekend, Jenny, and finds himself in the wall, in the gravel.
Red flag out, safety car deployed. That was a big hit, and as you say, exactly what he didn't need, and he's just jumping out of the car right now. But the pressure, we talk about the pressure. Do you think... it's hard, isn't it, to put into words what he's thinking in the car as George Russell looks on and just gets out of the way.
George Russell doesn't look as happy as he did at the start of the session, did he? Thinking, that's my car you've just trashed there. Yeah, maybe he was pushing a bit too hard. You can hardly blame him for that. He wants to make an impression. He will be very unhappy. Mercedes will be very unhappy at this moment in time. However, as I was saying a bit earlier...
We're just getting another look at how it happened. So he comes into the braking zone of Parabolica, turns in, and all looks fine. And then he, mid-corner, just loses the rear, and round he goes. Nothing he could do to stop that. This is the sound on board with Antonelli. Let's just listen in. He just carried a bit too much speed in, I think, and lost the rear, and it snapped on him. Round he went, and into the barrier, with an abrupt stop for the 18-year-old Italian from Bologna, heavily tipped to be the man to replace Lewis Hamilton at Mercedes next year. Finds himself in the wall with still 47 minutes remaining of free practice one. You know what? I'll put it out there. I don't think that's going to damage his chances of a race seat.
You okay? Are you okay?
Yeah. Sorry.
Kimi, all good. All good, Kimi.
Interesting, that's Toto Wolff on the radio there.
It's like your dad coming on the radio, isn't it?
That was the point just before we saw the replay I was going to make. Mercedes won't be happy in this moment in time, but they will... Oh, big grimace there from Toto Wolff. It's not going to wreck his chances. He was pushing too hard. You can forgive him that. It happens. I still think he'll be an F1 driver next year.
Yeah, I don't think that's going to stop him.
And interestingly, his dad was very kind of paternal there and saying it's okay. His dad is actually in the garage as well, just sitting behind Toto. I think Marco is his name.
Yeah.
And you can imagine the pain that he would feel by watching his son first time out in a proper F1 car, and having that big impact, having to go to the medical centre because the impact was such that he would automatically have to go, and actually the medical car has just dropped him at the medical centre. And you can imagine how many journalists are going to be going to that medical centre just to see, just to record it all, just to capture it on video. I mean, it's not the amazing start that anyone involved in his programme would have wanted.
No, it's not, as the barrier pairs occur with the marshals straight to the scene and the car then being slowly removed. But I was going to do a bit of a rundown just of Antonelli's history. If you go back to 2019 is when he joined the Mercedes Driver Academy at the age of just 12. It's been supported by Toto Wolff since then, since his karting years. And then the big one, much like Oliver Behrman did this as well, winning Italian and German F4 in the same year back in 2022, champion of that. And that usually is quite a big indicator of there is a talented driver in the midst here. Moved up the next year to a championship called Formula Regional European Championship by Alpine, champion in that in the first time of asking. And then this was when he really came on the radar, because he dodged Formula 3. Mercedes decided it wasn't worth putting him in an F3 car for a season. Instead, felt he was ready for Formula 2. As we said at the start, bit of a tough start to begin with, but he is finding his feet. 2 wins, 2 podiums, currently sixth in the Formula 2 Championship, and has done some extensive testing in a couple-of-year-old Mercedes F1 cars. James Allison of Mercedes, the chief technical officer, describing him as fast and consistent, but on this occasion has found the wall. His fastest lap was a 1:23.955, sent out on the soft tyre. Hamilton is currently fastest on 1:23.3. Then it's Norris, Bottas, Antonelli, Albon, the top 5. Gasly, Tsunoda, Verstappen, who actually, Verstappen's been having a bit of a tough start to this free practice session. A lot of occasions where he's gone in deep to turn 1 and 2, the Rettifilo chicane, or indeed completely run over it. So Verstappen trying to get to grips with his Red Bull. Sainz is 9th, Ricciardo 10th, Magnussen, Perez, Colapinto on debut is currently 13th, Leclerc, Joe and Hulkenberg, the 16 drivers who have set lap times. No lap times through from Alonso, Stroll, Ocon or Piastri. Red flag conditions, but of course, Jenny, in practice the clock continues to count down.
Yeah, and I wonder what the other drivers are thinking, because they've all been in this situation. They've all gone out in FP1 and tried their hardest to have a good session. Some of them have, some of them have not. I remember Verstappen's first session, that was pretty impressive. I remember Magnussen's first, that was quite impressive as well. There are
Japan, Verstappen,
yes,
free practice.
Yeah.
So of all the tracks as well, to try out a really young driver, that's a challenging one to go in at.
But I think they did that on purpose, didn't they? They just wanted to test him out at the highest level, and he did it, and he did it really well. And I feel for Antonelli, and I just wonder, the other 19 drivers sitting there thinking, thank goodness it isn't me, or thinking, oh, that's a bit embarrassing. There must be a whole range of, as well as it's interrupted their own plans.
Well, I think Mercedes, particularly Toto Wolff, has been very wary of how much they've spoken about Antonelli for an F1 drive this year, and as Bex mentioned, has almost tried to backtrack on that a little bit. But I think we can say that he's clearly got a great sort of safety net around him, and people are looking after his welfare, and of course it is in Mercedes and Toto Wolff's business to do that. As we just get another look at the crash, let's bring in the BBC's F1 correspondent Andrew Benson. Andrew, all eyes on Kimi Antonelli, and then in the wall he goes.
Indeed, and in the Toto Wolff interview that I did in Zandvoort, which you can hear on the podcast later, one of the things he said, by the way, I'm telling you this because I'm not breaking any exclusives because it's already on the website, he said we need to provide an environment, if he was in the car, that he can learn and develop. Clearly with young drivers they make mistakes and they have to learn sometimes the hard way, and all of that we would expect if we put him in the car. Now, whether Toto Wolff expected it quite this soon, I don't know. I think it's interesting that Antonelli was fastest on his first lap, then Hamilton beat his time by 0.6, and then on the very next lap he crashed. I'm not saying that was the cause, it's just an interesting coincidence potentially. And I think, the context we have to think about is this is only the beginning of the pressure on Andrea Kimi Antonelli. Next year he's going to be up against George Russell in that Mercedes, who's one of the very best drivers in Formula One. Look at his qualifying record against Hamilton this year, and the chances are that they are competing with each other for the one seat at Mercedes in 2026 alongside Max Verstappen, which at the moment things look like they're heading in that direction. It's a long way from firmed up, that, by the way, but it's certainly a possibility, a decent possibility. So, at some point, if Verstappen joins Mercedes, Wolff will have to make a choice between Antonelli and Russell. And he even says in the interview he doesn't expect Antonelli to beat Russell. So we're talking an intense pressure cooker environment. And as Wolff put it himself, he just needs to swim. We're not sitting with him in the car. He has the talent, the intelligence, the ability, all of it to do it well. We have to wait and see whether he can do that, of course.
We do indeed. Thank you, Andrew. But with our first public glimpse of Antonelli in a Mercedes, going fastest and then losing out that top time and then finding the wall a lap later. He is out of the car, he is okay, and is already back in the medical car and back in the paddock and being seen to as the car is being lifted away onto the flatbed truck and driven back to the pit lane.
I tell you what, that's really good news for Mercedes that the car is back. Sometimes you get a car stranded out on track and you can't have it back until the end of the session has finished, and even then it might be half an hour later. But actually they've got the car back, so George Russell is at the back of the garage. It's his car, and I think he'll breathe a sigh of relief, because actually they can get on, the mechanics can understand what's gone with that car, the crash, the impact, and make sure it's back in time for FP2.
Do you know what else Antonelli can take heart from? I'm going to give credit to producer Joe for this. Lewis Hamilton in 2007 crashed on his second day of testing with McLaren. 185 miles an hour on the second day, smashed the car into the wall, car was done for the week, and here we are today. So
you shouldn't have given producer Joe credit for that.
Yeah, I've got to give him credit for that.
No.
Lewis Hamilton also crashed in 2014 in pre-season testing in Jerez.
The best do it.
So the best do it. So I don't think he should be too worried. I don't think we should overplay it. It's just, these things happen. He was pushing. You can understand why. He wants to make an impression. I imagine, as Jen said, the other 19 drivers aren't particularly happy about losing the track time at a circuit, obviously low downforce, because it's so high speed. They'll be wanting to test things out. We'll get to it, but there's obviously some upgrades here this weekend as well. But yeah, I think Antonelli will be all right.
Estimated time of session resumption, 13:53 local time, so in a couple of minutes time. Hashtag BBC F1. JJ, I think it was Alonso who always said you can only find the limits by exceeding them. Clearly Antonelli has taken that on board.
And we all know Alonso had that massive off in, where was it, Spain? He crashed in the McLaren. So McLaren obviously have a good track record, and this time it's Mercedes. But as you say, I don't think it'll affect anything. Just, I suppose it's a dent to his ego, if anything.
Yeah, and look, I think it's widely expected he'll get another chance in an FP1 session before the end of the year. So it won't be the last we see of Antonelli.
Plans were, I think, to unveil him at some time this weekend or after this weekend. I mean, he is an Italian, they're in Italy, it makes kind of sense. But would they now delay that announcement so that they can actually make a better start to that career, or would they just do it anyway to actually cement his place and don't worry about the crash, you are going to be in this car next year?
I think they'd still go ahead with it. I mean, there's a whole comms plan that gets put in place, and there'll be sponsors that will probably follow him in. And also, what a confidence boost, because I imagine right now the biggest dent isn't in the tyre wall, it's probably to his confidence. So Mercedes turn around and say, don't worry about it, he's still our man. I don't see why they would deviate from the plan. I think we'll still have it confirmed within a week or so.
On the subject of rookies, and I mentioned it earlier, Bex, about how limited running there is now. There's sort of been mumblings and rumours about some sort of post-season sprint race for rookies, which I am all for.
Me too. I think it's a great idea, isn't it? So after the post-season test, I think it is in Abu Dhabi, it will be, they get the rookies, they do a sprint. We've talked about this before, Harry, a few races ago, about how there was a time not that long ago where rookies didn't seem to really have any path into F1. That's obviously now changing quite quickly. And I love this idea. Let's give them a chance. Let's get them in the F1 cars. Some of the drivers are more on board than others. I'm not sure why any driver would be against it. The reason that they're actually doing it isn't for the career progression of the F2 drivers, it's because they want more action on track. But anyway, it's win-win, so cash is always king, I suppose, but actually the F2 drivers will get a lot out of it. I love it as an idea, but I still want a World Championship go-karting race where everyone drives the same go-kart.
Yes.
That would be cool. Because there was, of course, the Olympics happening. There was a lot of talk about how can we showcase any kind of racing in the Olympics, and really the only way to do that is all the cars, or machinery at least, has to be equal.
And go-karts is the perfect way to do it. I mean, it gets more kids involved in go-karting if they see a go-kart and think, oh, I could do that. Doesn't matter if they're boys or girls, they just get them into karting. And
they've built the facility. I don't know if I'm allowed to say it, but there is a facility somewhere in London that you can go to if you so desire. So
you can say it.
It's in the Tottenham Stadium.
I mean, there aren't others available, so we can't say that really.
It's a very good one. I'm start selling off. Right, anyway, wrong channel. Ricardo Radio.
Saved.
Did you find someone you know there?
There was a kid waving, so he got quite excited.
That's good.
Oh, that's Ricardo, who's just sat waiting patiently, or was sat waiting patiently at the end of the pit lane, giving a kid a little wave out of the cockpit there. That would have made his day for sure. Back underway, by the way. It's all been cleared up now. The barriers repaired, the gravel swept back nice and neatly, and the car making it back to the Mercedes garage. So for those who wish to do a sync up again, it's 35 minutes and 13 seconds remain.
Can I ask a question, please? It's coming on X, and Simon has said, is there a reason Russell is sitting out FP1? I presumed that as he's leaving, it would be Hamilton missing out for Kimi.
Well, we had this debate, didn't we, just off air? I mean, look, it's part of the rules that came in a few years ago, that it is mandatory for every team to run a rookie driver in multiple free practice sessions throughout the year. And normally the way they split it, it will be divvied up between the two drivers. Indeed, Fernando Alonso was actually supposed to sit out this session for Felipe Drugovich, Aston Martin's reserve driver, but because the entire track has been resurfaced, which has changed the nature of it quite abruptly, Aston Martin decided to renegade on that. I don't know the precise reasons behind why they've chosen him to replace Russell instead, as Verstappen runs wide, coming out of the second Lesmo, kicks up a bit of gravel to boot, but manages to keep it on the straight and narrow. He's got Hamilton just in front of him, actually, as he heads towards the Ascari chicane. But I imagine the next free practice session we'll see he'll replace Hamilton instead. But it's quite nice, well, it would have been quite nice to sort of have the two, Hamilton and Antonelli, out on track. The old guard giving way to the new. Maybe a little bit of a comparison, because I suppose at the end of the day, Hamilton is the man he is expected to replace. I don't think anyone can expect him to come in and absolutely be at the level of Lewis Hamilton on day one of the job, but I'm sure it would have been quite nice to have Hamilton as your benchmark in your first free practice outing. Verstappen, despite putting a wheel onto the gravel, goes fastest on the soft tyre, a 1:23.088 is the fastest time. Then it's Hamilton, Norris, Bottas is up there, 7/10 off on the medium tyre. Antonelli still holding that fifth fastest time, now out of the session. Albon, Ricciardo, Gasly is ninth as Perez puts his Red Bull up into fifth. Tsunoda currently rounds out the top 10. The sound you're hearing is Franco Colapinto, the Argentine driver who has replaced the American Logan Sargeant for the remainder of the season. His teammate Albon has just gone fastest with a 1:22.6. Let's see what Colapinto's got across the line. A 1:24.5, both on the medium tyre. Colapinto goes up to 12th. Now, Franco Colapinto, since last year, really, has been a part of the Williams Academy scheme. And he's a James Vowles pick, which I think is really important to remember here. Logan Sargeant was, and I suppose still remains, a part of the Williams Academy. But he wasn't really a James Vowles pick. He was the previous incarnation. I think Colapinto actually lost quite a lot of time coming through the De La Rocha chicane. Just got a little bit crossed up over the curbs. The rear of the car just stepping out. But nice bit of car control there from Colapinto. But just 21 years old, from Buenos Aires. A little bit of background on him. Is the Spanish Formula 4 champion. Got to go back to 2019 on that one. Then made a step up to a series called the Toyota Racing Series, where he finished third, and indeed Formula Renault Euro Cup, the same championship the likes of Oscar Piastri won. He finished third in. And then since, he's been making his way sort of single-seater route, but also done a bit of Le Mans running as well in a prototype car, so he's actually quite experienced in multiple different racing machinery. Finished fourth in Formula 3 last year, and is currently with a win to his name back in Imola in the Formula 2 championship. So I don't think he's not an outright favourite in Formula 2 as a championship challenger, but he's fast, he's consistent, and he's an exciting pick. I'm actually really pleased that Colapinto is getting an outing here. And I mean, Bex, he only found out on Monday. That is not a lot of time to prepare.
Yeah, he was in I think he was in a simulator, and then he got bussed over to Grove basically to be told to get the seat fitted for this weekend. So it was a surprise. I don't think anyone had Colapinto down. But James Vowles has been, I think it's a really bold move from him, but I like it. I do like it. He also looked at Liam Lawson. He had a conversation with Red Bull whether they would release him. I think that conversation died in the water pretty quickly. Ooh.
Hamilton just running out wide of the second Lesmo, much like Verstappen did, but Hamilton with a little bit more gravel being chucked in the air and also bouncing across the curbs. I think that, just seeing a replay, the Della Roja chicane, turns 4 and 5. So a lot of the cars struggling out there, really pushing the boundaries and getting up to speed in FP1.
So Red Bull were apparently quite receptive to the idea of loaning out Liam Lawson. As you can imagine, great experience for him, but they couldn't make it work. And then the other person they looked at was Mick Schumacher. James Vowles, though, quite cuttingly said he isn't special. His words. It was quite brutal.
Ouch!
Yeah, really painful. Quite punchy from James Vowles, I thought. What he was saying is that he would be coming back in. He's had his shot at F1. Actually, we need to be thinking about our future. We have this great driver in Colapinto in our academy, doing well in F2. He's out of the title fight for F2 now anyway, in all but maths pretty much. So why not? Let's give him a go. I think what he was trying to say, just I perhaps wouldn't have used those words myself. But they were the only options at the end of the day, because Ferrari are obviously never going to release Carlos Sainz halfway through the year. And we were talking a bit earlier about the timing of it. Obviously the Zandvoort crash in free practice ended Sargent's career. And James Vowles was saying, because obviously we were all expecting him to be dropped at some point, but James Vowles was saying this morning that the reason it happened after Zandvoort was because throughout the year they didn't feel like they were giving Alex Albon, his teammate, or Sargent a car that could score points. So it was a case of just trying to move the car forward. However, when they returned after the summer break, he truly felt that they could now start scoring points, and he poured through all of the data after Zandvoort and just decided that he said it was almost unfair to keep Sargent in the seat and that he had to go. They need the points. The midfield is so close.
Yeah, I mean, we're not surprised. That's the bottom line, isn't it? And here's Leclerc.
Yeah, I nearly lost it in turn 6.
Yeah, we saw.
Car is very tricky to drive.
So upgrades on the Ferrari for this weekend, and Leclerc struggling with it, coming through the first of the Lesmos. Andrew, coming back to Colapinto, he is now the youngest on the grid. He's not had a lot of time to prepare, but as we've discussed, clearly James Vowles thinks, well, actually, when all the options are laid out on the table, Colapinto is Williams' man to the end of the season. How do you look at it?
Well, it's interesting that those words that Vowles used about Mick Schumacher, good but not special, are exactly the same way he described Colapinto.
Ouch.
The bottom line is, yeah, first of all, Colapinto brings money. I don't know how much, but quite a lot of money from Argentine sponsors. So that obviously eased his path. The second thing was Liam Lawson was someone they were very interested in, but Red Bull weren't prepared to release him for the entirety of the rest of the season. They wanted the ability to bring him back if they chose to, and I believe that there is still a plan, or at least still a consideration, to swap around some of the Red Bull drivers in the course of the remaining races of this season. So obviously the people under pressure there are Daniel Ricciardo and Sergio Perez. That could happen in 2 or 3 races time, I'm told, although it's not confirmed yet. And then Mick Schumacher, Toto Wolff has been really pushing for Schumacher to get another Formula One seat, but basically no one else in Formula One can understand why, because they all regard Schumacher exactly as James Vowles described, good but not special. He had 2 years at Haas. He was reasonably quick, but not that quick. He crashed way too much, just in the same way Logan Sargent did. So when they got to the point of the final straw, don't forget Logan Sargent had those new upgrades on his car that cost a lot of money to make those new parts, and he stacked it in the most unnecessary way, just driving onto the grass basically when it was wet in Zandvoort on Saturday morning. Completely unnecessary accident. And Vowles had enough. Basically, he didn't see any option. He couldn't have Lawson, and if he was choosing between his own driver, who brought money, and Schumacher, who he didn't consider to be any better, he thought, well, we might as well go for our own driver.
Yeah, and it's hard. You see the logic in that, don't you? Completely. And when you look at Schumacher as well, he wasn't really able to beat Kevin Magnussen on a consistent basis either. When you look at Magnussen now being absolutely kind of swept under the rug by Nico Hülkenberg, you go, okay, well, actually, if Schumacher's sort of not as good as Magnussen, then why are we going to put him in the car either? I will just say, I mean, I've commentated on Colapinto back in the Formula 3 days, and I remember his first race, Bahrain, where he'd come from, a couple of lower league single-seaters and even a bit of prototype racing, and he put it on pole position for the Bahrain feature race with a brand new team as well. He's not a champion in waiting, perhaps, as Antonelli or a Behrman might be, but I genuinely think he is fast and consistent, and he has no history of crashes, essentially. So I generally think this is a really exciting decision from Williams.
And I think the timing of this is perfect for James Vowles. He's trying to command some authority. He's trying to make Williams a brand again, a big brand that is exciting. They have Sainz coming next year. That's Sainz still delivered. And he could do what he wanted in a way. There's no pressure. It would be nice for them to have a bit of money coming in. You have to admit that, because the team need money all the time and they're trying to develop all the time. But I think he personally has lined up and teed this up for the academy, for his future, for the academy and Williams' future. And I think that's a really bold and exciting and very much a management style that he's trying to employ with all of these decisions. I think it is exciting.
Yeah, and while there will be no race seat available to him at Williams for next year, if Colapinto does exceed all expectations, suddenly he's put himself in the shop window for perhaps a Sauber drive next year, morphing into Audi. Maybe they'll start to look at him. Equally, he goes back to Formula 2 to do a football, hopefully complete a full season there, because now he won't be able to take part in the rest of the championship with still rounds remaining in F2. Go back with renewed confidence and a huge spotlight on him suddenly as somebody who can hack it at the pinnacle of motorsport. So I look at this with only positives. It is a shame, of course, for Logan Sargent, but the writing had been on the wall. The only surprise, as we said, is that it came in the build-up to this weekend, really, and not, well, some might say not at the start of the year or the end of last year or even in the summer break.
Franco does have some good form here, doesn't he, though? Around Monza, he's done well in the past, so it kind of makes sense to...
He's a winner.
To put him in here rather than
before we go to Baku and Singapore. So
he's at least got some confidence in that car at a track he knows and goes well at before he's thrown to the Lions.
And we saw Nick de Vries a couple of years ago got parachuted into the Williams at this race. Williams do historically go well around here. It's a track, as you say.
Because that ended well.
How quickly things can change in Formula 1. Right, I think that's Antonelli and Colapinto pretty well covered. 23 minutes remain of free practice one. Valtteri Bottas has been putting in the lappage. He's fastest at the moment on the soft tyre with a 1:22.1. Less than a tenth of a second between him and his old teammate Lewis Hamilton. Albon is third on an outlap at the moment. They are all on the soft tyre. Then comes Norris. Sainz is fifth ahead of Gasly, Zhou, Perez, Colapinto and Verstappen, the top 10. Piastri, Leclerc, Ricciardo, Hülkenberg and Ocon is 15th ahead of Magnussen's Haas. Then comes the two Aston Martins, actually, of Alonso in 17th and Stroll in 18th. Antonelli has fallen down to 19th after his crash early doors. And Tsunoda, the only man out there who is on the hard tyre, who was on the hard tyre, he's in the pits now, 20th and last. So Tsunoda working through a programme, I would suspect. Indeed, Ray RB have brought quite a few performance upgrades as well to the floor, body and the halo, along with pretty much everyone bringing circuit specific upgrades when it comes to the front wing and the rear wing being slimmed down for a low downforce setup to maximize your speed around this incredibly high speed track here at Monza, 9 miles northeast of Milan. You can get up to speeds of 350 kilometers an hour. It is something exceptional. Right, we've done the rookies. Should we go back to the more experienced hands amongst the field and perhaps talk about, have we got a title fight on our hands in the drivers? Because, Bex, Lando Norris may well call me stupid for thinking there might be a driver's title chance, but I'm going in on that. I genuinely think if he continues at the rate he does, it's on the cards.
Well, I'm going to agree with you. Which
and we'll end it there.
He's a very nice man. I've never heard him call anyone stupid. But I agree with you. So there are 9 races left. There are 70 points between Max Verstappen, who is currently leading, and Lando Norris in second. Behind them is Charles Leclerc, who's 103 points behind Verstappen, and then it's Piastri 116 behind. So yes, I'm going to say, of course, mathematically it's still on, but it looks like all the momentum now is with McLaren, and it's not quite right at Red Bull, is it? So they've been struggling ever since they brought this new floor to Imola, it was in May. They have what they're now calling this weekend a Franco floor, which I think is meant to be their attempt at trying to explain their Franken-style floor, which is basically an old floor with a bit of the new floor that they know works, but not completely the new floor, and it's been meshed together to try and see what they can put together. Verstappen is still very unhappy with the balance of the car. This is what he was saying on Thursday before he'd even driven the car, so we'll obviously hear from him again at the end of the day, but he is not happy with how that car is performing. It's obviously not the quickest car anymore, which is a problem here at the fastest track on the calendar. So I agree with you. If Lando Norris can do what I think Sebastian Vettel did in 2013 and just go on and win every single race until the end of the year, and do you know what? I think Lando thinks that the fight is on, because he went for the fastest lap last weekend. And that, the first thing that I thought of when I saw him do that, because McLaren certainly weren't telling him to do it, and Andrea Stella, the McLaren team boss, said if he'd asked, they'd have said no. But he went for it anyway, because he knows how important every single point is going to be. So I honestly do think that we have a title fight on our hands.
Andrea Stella, the team principal, made references to Sebastian Vettel's title run back in 2013, where he went on to 9 consecutive race wins towards the end of the season. And if Norris can do that, and Verstappen has some rough races, he needs Norris, he needs Piastri to be his backup.
This is the key, because Verstappen doesn't have Perez. I think we can quite confidently say that, whereas Norris has Piastri. Okay, Piastri was very clear on Thursday. He said he is in it to win races. The priority is the Constructors' Championship. McLaren are only 30 points behind Red Bull in the Constructors. That is definitely on. Sainz radio.
Sainz just nearly did Antonelli, actually, coming through the Parabolica, but managed to save his Ferrari and just run wide into the little bit of runoff area that is on the strip outside before it gets to the gravel. That was actually quite a decent lap from Sainz before he went wide.
So the Constructors' Championship is obviously what makes everyone happy, because that's what bonuses are paid out, so that's what prize money is determined by. But the Drivers' Championship, with Piastri, he said, I'm going to keep fighting for wins because I want to help the team win. As soon as I'm not mathematically able to win the championship, I will then start to back Norris. However, he also said that he will do whatever the team asks of him. So I think that's a very clever position to put himself in, because I still don't really understand why Stella hasn't come out and said, we're going to go all in on Norris. Because he is performing, he is winning races, he is the closest. And I still think switching the drivers around... Oh, Albon radio...
He's just saying track evolution is massive. Just worth remembering the entire track has been resurfaced.
So I think Stella should just put their eggs in one basket. I think they should have just let Norris win when Piastri took the win in Hungary. That 7 points could prove crucial. I know the argument, we don't know, but at the end of the year, I think we're all going to be looking back, and that will be the race that stands out possibly, and I don't want it to be for the wrong reason.
And I think Piastri, whilst he's saying that out loud to everyone, saying, I'm still in it, I'll still fight, I'm not going to give this over to Norris, I think his attitude behind closed doors might be a little different, because he knows how important this is for McLaren. They haven't won a championship since 1998, and they are on the cusp. And I was thinking about it the other day, and how Zak Brown has turned this ship around. And it's not even a slow and steady. It's a, right, pull on the yank and pull the mainsail, and we are turning this, and we are going to do it quite quickly. And the changes are made, and you can listen to that Zak Brown interview from last weekend when Andrew Benson sat down with him. It's in the checkered flag, and it was so interesting, and I don't say that lightly. It was really interesting what Zak was saying and the attitude that this team now has, and it's a very different McLaren to the McLaren of the last 20 years, I would say. And it's bold and it's brave, and they know what's at stake, and they might have well let Piastri take that win in Hungary, but they know what's coming, and they will work together to make Norris a title contender, I believe.
Could they be chasing their first Drivers' Championship since 2008 with Hamilton, or indeed their first Constructors' Championship since 1998, as you said, Jen? Either one would be amazing for the British team, with one of the strongest driver lineups they've had in a long time. And I would love to know what Mark Webber is saying to Oscar Piastri behind closed doors. Mark Webber is Oscar Piastri's manager, and Webber is, if you're in danger of becoming a number 2 driver, well, Webber's the man to have in your corner, isn't he? Because he knows almost the warning signs, and perhaps with hindsight knows what to say and what not to say, and how to deal with that. So I think Piastri's well placed, but at the moment Norris is the quicker driver. We saw that last time out in Zandvoort, where I think both cars actually got bad starts. Here's Leclerc.
How bad is the deceleration? Because it feels particularly bad.
It's poor.
Degradation is poor for Charles Leclerc in the Ferrari. Oh, deceleration, sorry, not degradation. Deceleration is poor for the Ferrari at the moment. He's second fastest, actually. He's on an outlap. Carlos Sainz is 6th fastest at the moment. Of course, he had that moment a few laps ago where he ran wide at the Parabolica. But indeed, perhaps Piastri lost out on a podium last time out as well with that poor start. That cost him, was really kind of stuck behind that fed him behind the Ferrari, and indeed couldn't do anything for Verstappen and his Red Bull. So that's what McLaren need, both drivers fighting for 1 and 2, and then it's a fight between Verstappen, Ferrari maybe for the final spot on the podium.
Do you think, as I said, this weekend, do you think it could be a McLaren 1-2?
I see no reason why it can't be.
Yeah, absolutely plausible. Yeah.
They are probably all round the strongest car at the moment. What they brought this weekend, they brought a new engine cover as a bit of a performance gain, along with the front corner and the front wing modifications being brought for Monza. It's Ferrari who we're all looking at, really, who have brought a lot. In terms of actual performance upgrades, nose, mirror, floor fences, body, edge, diffuser, the engine cover, and in terms of circuit specific, we're looking at the front wing and the rear wing. And Andrew, this is Ferrari continuing to try and fix those issues that were brought in with the last kind of big upgrade back in Spain, was it? And the introduction of the bouncing again.
That's right, yes. There's some tweaks to the floor, basically. They're not aimed at... Lots of teams have new parts here, but many of them are Monza specific for low downforce spec, but Ferrari have those too. The floor changes are not part of that spec. They're hoping that they'll address the porpoising or bouncing, if you like, issues that they introduced with their new floor in Spain, which did add a load of downforce, but as is often the case with these ground effect regulations, it brought in this bouncing effect as well, because the extra downforce sucks the cars to the ground, and then the airflow under the car stalls and the car bounces up again, and so on and so forth. Anyway, I wanted to make a point about the title race. Lando Norris has been saying, when he said it was stupid to talk about it, he wasn't meaning he didn't think he had a chance. He's been clear that he does have a chance. He just thinks that there's no point addressing it now from his point of view, because he just has to do the best he can every race. And on that subject, let's not forget, Beck was saying that Verstappen needs to have some bad weekends. 2 weekends' time is Singapore, where they were really, really bad last year. And they were also bad, if you remember, in Monaco earlier this year. And it's for the same reason. The car does not work well on bumpy circuits with curb riding involved. And nothing has changed about that. Verstappen was asked about that specifically yesterday. He said that aspect of the car hasn't changed, and it's separate from the balance issues that they've been experiencing that have slowed them down in recent races. So I said to him, does that mean you're expecting another nightmare Singapore? And he kind of smiled at me because he obviously realised he wasn't about to repeat the word nightmare back at me. But he said, well, at the moment we're not even the fastest car on a normal track, so I don't expect Singapore to suddenly be fantastic. It's not going to swap around in Singapore for us. So that could be the race where Norris could get back a huge haul of points if Verstappen qualifies out of the top 10 potentially, can't get into the top 6 in that race, which I think is very possible. Suddenly the championship's going to start looking a bit more on, as long as Norris can capitalise. And this is a point that Verstappen was making yesterday as well. He points out it is doable for Norris, but as he put it, you need to have a perfect end to the season, and that's very hard.
One thing, Andrew, that McLaren will be concerned about is their starts still. And I just wonder, I don't know if we know any more about sort of the reasoning behind it wasn't just Norris who got a bit of a poor start in Zandvoort, but Piastri lost ground as well. So I wonder how much these days it depends on driver and, of course, the electronic systems and the implementation that are done by the team with the car.
Okay, so they are bothered about their starts, McLaren, sorry, there's no question about that. Andrea Stella, the team principal, says, look, our starts aren't bad. Actually, our starts, in terms of the average of the grid, they're pretty good. The problem they've got is that there's a handful of cars that do consistently make better starts, and Verstappen is one of them. And that's obviously the issue for Norris. If he ends up alongside Verstappen on the front of the grid, at the moment it's beginning to look like every time Verstappen will be in the lead at the first corner. So they're going to try and address that. The issue is that every single start problem, if you like, has been different. So if you think back, Spain, Norris got beaten or out-accelerated initially by Verstappen, which allowed Verstappen to get down his inside at the first corner. Hungary, Piastri and Verstappen got better starts than him. Spa, that was just a simple mistake by Norris. He ran too wide out of the first corner, trying to be cautious and not get involved in an accident. And then in Zandvoort, as you say, Harry, it was both McLarens. So it's not like it's one single issue that they've got to focus on. I think that's what's difficult. But they do realise it's something they need to address, and address quite quickly.
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. Andrew Benson, the BBC's F1 correspondent, with myself, Harry Benjamin, Rebecca Clancy, Autosports editor-in-chief, and Jenny Gow as well. The other thing to note, actually, Piastri is the top scorer in the last 5 Grand Prix. 92 points he's scored. That's 8 more than Hamilton, 16 more than Verstappen. So it's so easy to fine-pick the issues, isn't it? But that's what it will come down to in the end, fine margins. And, I mean, what a difference a year makes almost. Let's not over-egg it. Verstappen and Red Bull haven't completely fallen off the cliff and are struggling to get into the top 10, but it was this time last year that Monza was Verstappen's 10th consecutive race win, and now Red Bull are currently experiencing their longest run of non-winning since 2021. So how quickly things change, Jenny.
It's curious, isn't it? I think a lot of people looking at the results would go, what happened to Red Bull? Why are they so bad at the moment compared to where they were, and the fact that Lando Norris, Piastri, so many other people have won this year, which has been really refreshing. But we would never have thought that at the beginning of the season. We all thought this could be a Verstappen whitewash. He could win every single race, and now look at it. So it is fascinating to think what has gone on at Red Bull. Are they missing out? Have they just maximised their package? Is that as far as they can go? Have they taken a wrong turn in development? There's so many theories, and without being Adrian Newey, Christian Horner, Helmut Marko, we won't know the answers to that.
Well, you mentioned a key name there, Jenny. Andrew, Adrian Newey. He's not completely left the team yet, but my understanding is he's obviously not as actively involved anymore. Is it a direct correlation from that?
Well, it's a really interesting question, Harry, and the issue is he has left the team effectively. In fact, Verstappen was saying yesterday that even his office has moved because he's only working on their...
He's been given the porter cabin in the car park.
Basically selling it as much as he can. Yeah, exactly. Whereas before, his office used to be just across the way from Christian Horner's. Now, there's a really interesting bunch of stats that Gary Anderson, the former Jordan and Jaguar technical director, came out with on the race website earlier this week. He compared the finishing positions in qualifying and race for Verstappen and Perez before Newey's exit became official and after Newey's exit became official. So Verstappen was averaging 1 before Newey left, i.e. first in both. Newey, after he leaves, Verstappen is on 2.3 in the qualifying and 2.9 in the race. Perez, third on average in qualifying, 2.8 on average in qualifying. In the race now, average 10th, and in the race, average 6.4. Now, it could be a coincidence that you lose the greatest designer in Formula One history and suddenly you lose your way. Could be. Anyway, so I asked Verstappen about this yesterday, and he said, is this anything to do with Adrian leaving? And he goes, normally not, as in you wouldn't expect so. Since it was announced, it's been more difficult, but it shouldn't matter if someone's leaving on the spot, that immediately the performance drops because the car has always been the same. The thing is, Adrian Newey, one of the things that makes him so great is that he's such a holistic talent. He's not just a great designer. He's not just someone who can sprinkle a bit of stardust on this part of the car or that part of the car. He's also a brilliant race engineer, and he's also brilliant at understanding what a Formula One driver needs from his car to go fast. If you take that out of the mix, it could have, I think, it's only my opinion, it could have this kind of an impact. And obviously it's a question we're never going to know the answer to, but I'd be interested to know what you guys think about that.
I feel like we do know the answer though, don't we, Benny? I feel like I completely agree with you. The greatest designer in history leaves. He's got suddenly no input into the tech at all. As you said, his office used to be across on the same floor. You could see Horner's office from across the way. Newey, from what I understand, is in a completely different building now, and the performance is falling off. So they're trying to, I was talking about the Frankenstein floor earlier, they're cobbling this thing together. Newey has no input in it at all. And you just have this feeling, don't you, that actually if Newey was still around, it wouldn't be so Frankenstein-ish.
Beck, do we know any more about where Newey might end up?
No.
Is Aston Martin still the front runner?
Yes, so they are, well, it depends who you talk to. So there is this feeling that Aston Martin have written the contract. It's there waiting on the table. We know they did the private tour. We know it's of interest to Newey because the facilities are meant to be incredible, the new factory. It's just opposite the Silverstone circuit. And he was very impressed with what they were offering him. And it obviously doesn't really involve much of a life change. However, the old romantic of Ferrari is still there. It's still tantalisingly an option to go there to work with Lewis Hamilton. We all know that Newey had said that Hamilton is a driver he would love to work with. We won't find out until next month at the earliest for contractual reasons with Red Bull, so we can't find out before it's near the end of September. A part of me is starting to think he might just have a break, but he's one of the hardest working people in F1, so then the other part of me thinks, nah, we'll know pretty soon who he's going to be taking to the top of the championship next year.
So Beck, obviously we're dear friends, but I have to disagree with you on
Benny.
This one. I don't think there's a chance of him going
to
Ferrari.
We might not be by the end of this conversation.
I think the Ferrari chance has been over for a while. I think and Aston Martin were the favourites for a while. I'm told that Newey's having slightly cold feet about Aston Martin at the moment because he's a bit wary of working with Lawrence Stroll, who we all know is very demanding.
I had heard similar.
Kind of personality. Yeah, of course, and I know also that Alpine, with Flavio Briatore in charge there now, are pushing quite hard with Newey. They're offering him money as well.
Well, Williams apparently offered him an equity stake, didn't they?
Yeah, and Williams obviously. So it's basically, I think, as far as I'm told, it's between Aston Martin, Williams and Alpine. Or, as you say, he takes a break. And I think this is the thing. You know, obviously he didn't negotiate an early exit from his Red Bull contract, which would allow him to work for another team in the beginning of March 2025 in time to start work on the 2026 regulations without the intention of doing that. He didn't do that to just go and sit on the beach and drive around in his camper van with his wife. because otherwise he could just walk away and not bother about renegotiating his contract and making sure he can get out, wouldn't he? So he did want to work for another team, for sure.
But that was 6 months ago.
Exactly. But it may be that if you're faced with those options, Aston Martin, Williams and Alpine, maybe it doesn't sound so appealing to stay in Formula One. He's going to be 66 this December, So we don't know is the bottom line. I still think he'll end up coming back, but I don't know where it's going to be.
Okay, and we're still friends.
no response.
Cheers, Benny. Maybe not.
I never thought for a second we wouldn't be, Rebecca.
That's radio gold right there. Thank you, Andrew.
Can I just ask a question? If it was Alonso paired with someone else, would Newey bite your hand off to go to Aston Martin?
I think. Ooh.
Well, it's not so much the pairing of driver, is it? It's more the driver's
If you want to win a championship with your new team, are you going to go to Aston Martin?
But I think Benny's point kind of feeds into that, in that he is questioning what it would be like to work for Lawrence Stroll, who I think is quite a hard taskmaster, as you can imagine. The man's a billionaire. And his son is obviously driving for the team, and he wants the best for his son. So while they can say, you can come to Aston Martin, here's a blank piece of paper, do what you like, is that really the case? So yeah, you do kind of have to wonder if Alonso was partnered with someone else, would it make a difference? We'll never know, I suppose.
Well, Stroll is a podium sitter, and we've got a very slow-moving Colapinto as the checkered flag comes out, and he's coming back into the pit. Yellow flag in Sector 3. I wonder if that was indeed for Colapinto. Did he have a little moment? We haven't seen if that was the case. Indeed, just on Lance Stroll, the youngest front-row starter at 18 years and 309 days, and he did that at this very track back in 2017.
That was spectacular, I have to say. He's shown some moments of utter gold, just like Andrew Benson in his comedy, and this was one of them. So
give Stroll a Adrian Newey designed car, and Alonso will be top of the times with Stroll a couple of tenths back, and that's the championship, no? Well, we'll let you debate that one. I'm sure we'll debate it more in the Checkered Flag podcast, which will be coming to your ears a little later on today, where we'll dive into all that we have done and more. Just before we do the rundown, we're going to get a look at Colapinto coming into the Parabolica, turns it into the right-hander, and has a little bit of a moment, locks up, and then has to bail out of it into the gravel. But he manages to control his speed, gets it stopped, and then trundles across the gravel again back onto the circuit. So a couple of cars being caught out in that final corner. I wonder if it's the new tarmac, or indeed perhaps the wind might be causing a bit of issue. Esteban Ocon has found himself in a spin coming through the first chicane, and the rear end of that Aston Martin being lifted up over the curb as it then gets spanned back around to face an oncoming Red Bull of I think it was Sergio Perez. Either way, that is the checkered flag now out. It's Verstappen in the Red Bull fastest with a 1:21.6, a couple of tenths clear of Charles Leclerc in the Ferrari. Norris was third. Sainz, Bottas the top five. Then it's Piastri ahead of Hamilton. Albon was 8th. Then it's Perez and Alonso the top 10. Magnussen was 11th. Ricciardo, Tsunoda, Gasly, Joe 15th ahead of Stroll. Colapinto was 17th.
Seat is getting very hot. Okay, copy. We'll investigate.
As Hamilton says his seat is getting very hot. Colapinto was 17th ahead of Ocon, then Hülkenberg 19th, and Kimi Antonelli, the man many expect to be replacing Lewis Hamilton at Mercedes next season, getting his first public running in a Formula One car and his debut on a Grand Prix weekend, finding the barrier at the exit of the Parabolica chicane. He was out of the car, he was okay. The car, Jenny Gow, not so much.
Yeah, absolutely. You have to rebuild that for FP2. George Russell slipping back in 4 o'clock, by the way, FP2, if you want to come and join us and join the fun. It'll be on the BBC Sport website. I've just heard from the Mercedes team, and they've said that Kimi is annoyed with himself, but it's in a totally normal way, and they've also said it won't change anything, which we expected, I think, for them to say. Practice starts on Ferrari, and I think that was Charles Leclerc going on pole, and maybe, just maybe, we can see that. They had a pretty impressive session. But Beck, Max Verstappen fastest, that won't be the headlines from this session, I think.
No, I don't think so. It'll be all about Antonelli crashing pretty early on into his outing for replacing George Russell. He'll be fine. As you say, Mercedes will push ahead with signing him for next year, as we all fully expect. And also, I thought a pretty solid outing for Colapinto, making his debut in F1, having replaced Logan Sargent for the rest of the year. So a bit of a mixed session for the rookies, but I think they can be okay with it.
And signs of life, Harry, for Ferrari. I don't want to get on the hype train too much, but it is Monza. It is the Italian Grand Prix. They do sometimes pull something special out of nowhere, and let's face it, Charles was on the podium last time out.
And it is categorically proven that the Tifosi do give a car an extra 0.2 of a second
categorically
round Monza. Yes, but big upgrades on both Ferraris, trying to cure the problems they've been having. It's not completely smooth sailing, as we heard from Charles Leclerc, with some deceleration issues as well and just general balance issues, but it's FP1, it's a brand new track surface, so everybody is getting up to speed. We saw Verstappen as well coming a cropper into turns 1 and 2, so we'll get more by the end of the day.
And just a word, Valtteri Bottas. I mean, Sauber have been out of it. They have been nowhere. They have no points on the charts, but P5.
It's almost like he's fighting for his future in F1, and we believe he's talking to Audi about a drive there next year. But yeah, an incredibly impressive outing from Bottas there.
I'm happy for him.
Beats the 19th place he finished the Grand Prix in last time out, with his teammate Plum Lars behind him.
I know. And if Colapinto, I stumbled over the name, that's annoying. If he can finish P17 or qualify P17 and there's some kerfuffle ahead of him, you never know. They want him to score points. I think that's what they've said. They want a chance for their second driver to score points, and Monza's as good a place as any to score points.
Yeah, absolutely. I think his job now between FP2 and the race is just to not smash the car, get it round, learn the circuit, qualify where he can, and then stay out of trouble off the start, and then go from there. It's a long old race, this one. It's a lot of laps, and it's really fast. We do see accidents. It happens. You've just got to make sure you're in the right place to pick up points as and when they become available.
So Max Verstappen is first place for FP1. FP2 will be at 4 p.m. The Temple of Speed turns into the Temple of Doom for Kimi Antonelli. Do you like that one? Hopefully you do. Join us again at the BBC Sport website. This has been an IMG production for BBC Radio 5 Live.